Hello and welcome to News Round, a recap of stories that made headlines during the week. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. In the news, Nigeria to hold another national population census between March and April 2023, the first in 16 years. Lawmakers approve President Muhammadu Buhari's request for fuel subsidy payments in 2022 at the cost of 4 trillion naira. Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo declares intention to run for president in 2023. Plus, death toll from South Africa floods rises to more than 300. That's News Round in View. And we begin News Round with the approval by the Council of State to conduct another national population census in March and April 2023. This is coming 16 years after the previous exercise. And this was one of the 4 decisions made by the Council, as explained to State House correspondents after the meeting, which had in attendance all living past heads of state, both physically and virtually, all state governors, and the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, among other top government officials.
This is the 4th time President Muhammadu Buhari is presiding over the Council of State meeting. The meeting has in attendance former presidents of Nigeria and top government officials like the Vice President, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, the Chief of Staff to the President, and the National Security Advisor. After 4 hours of deliberations, journalists are briefed on the resolutions reached by Council. First, despite the high levels of insecurity, especially in remote parts of the country, and activities leading to the 2023 elections reaching top gear, a national census is built to hold between March and April of 2023.
Normally, we give about 6 months to 8 months after the pilot census before we conduct the main census. So that's why we're also conducting the main census after the elections have taken place and the outcomes are revealed. So that will be between March and April.
There will also be a security summit on Tuesday, the 19th of April, 2023, to discuss the various security threats across the country.
Where the situation is escalating is mentioned, where the situation is getting better was mentioned, and suggestions, like I've said, were proposed and solution discussed, and that was why President wants to call for the Security Council meeting on Tuesday to discuss all the issues raised.
The prerogative of mercy is to be granted to 159 convicts after 3 names were dropped by the Council. And national honors of Order of the Niger and Order of the Federal Republic are to be conferred on 434 Nigerians by President Muhammadu Buhari for the first time since 2015.
High-tech census.
An official date for a national census has been given, and that will be between March and April of 2023. And despite the insecurity situation in the country, they say this is going to hold. Meanwhile, Nigerians still want to know the identity of these particular groups that are harassing the country. We heard during the Federal Executive Council meeting that there is an unholy handshake between bandits and terrorist organizations, and this new form of warfare is the one that Nigerians will really want to understand. From the State House in Abuja, Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
To the National Assembly now, where the lawmakers have passed the revised MTEF and the 2022 supplementary budget, which makes provision for 4 trillion naira petrol subsidy. The total amount of the 2022 budget now comes to 17.3 trillion naira. The National Assembly raised the benchmark price for crude by $11 to accommodate the president's subsidy request.
It's the last plenary session before the National Assembly proceeds on a 2-week recess, and lawmakers in both chambers have before them 2 critical economic and policy documents: the revised fiscal policy framework and 2022 budget for passage. Federal lawmakers in the Senate are displeased at the level of crude oil theft, which is dealing a huge blow to the economy.
as a state, as a nation state, a sovereign state, it should not be impossible for us to stop people that are stealing our commonwealth in order to fund our country.
They also question how the country intends to finance the budget deficit.
Mr. President, when you have a deficit as high as 7-point-something trillion, with a threshold of 3.99, which is totally and absolutely above the threshold as presented by the Fiscal Responsibility Act, it means that the budget ab initio cannot be implemented. As at the first quarter of 2022, 13 vessels have been seized by the Nigerian Navy that contain our crude oil. So know that the Nigerian government is just sitting down doing nothing. They are working around the clock. And all these vessels that were stolen, they are working on it to see how it is returned back so that the crude oil can be properly disposed of and revenue related to this adequately reported.
NNPC has transited from under recovery. Now we have gone back to subsidy. And now we are moving from billion to trillion. It is so sad because this is money we should have used for developing our economy. We're using that money for pure consumption, useless consumption, and funding corruption. And this cannot be allowed.
Despite the concerns raised by lawmakers, the Senate approves President Buhari's request for adjustments to the 2022 fiscal framework with several indices.
And I agree completely with most of the issues raised, except that of not passing it. Because we need to take immediate actions, and in fact, we are going to set up another committee on this oil theft matter because we need to address it.
The upper chamber also passes the 2022 amended budget in the sum of 17.3 trillion naira. The budget is amended to make additional provision of 3.557 trillion naira for petrol subsidy and restore cuts made by the National Assembly from key capital projects in the 2022 budget proposal. The House of Representatives also passes the revised 2022 budget. The chairman, House Committee on Appropriation, explains the amendments made in the budget.
We increased the police salary by 182 billion. That is, I think that's the only difference between the Appropriation Act and the Amendment Bill.
The National Assembly raised the benchmark price of crude by $11 to accommodate the subsidy request of President Buhari. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
And against the backdrop of the continued attacks and killings by terrorists and other criminal elements in parts of the country, the House of Representatives is backing the call for the hiring of mercenaries to tackle the menace. The lawmakers arrived at this resolution after the Chairman House Committee on Police Affairs, Bello Kumo, called for the sack of the Minister of Defense and National Security Advisor over the security challenges. The same issue dominated deliberations in the upper chamber, where Senator George Sekibo expressed frustration at the unending killing of Nigerians.
It's the season of politics in Nigeria as the 2023 general election looms, and so politicians are jostling for various elective positions. However, as political activities hold sway, a frightening situation continues behind the scenes unabated. The killing of Nigerians by terrorists. Nigerians in Kaduna, Niger, Zamfara, as well as Benue, Katsina and Plateau states are under constant threat of being attacked and killed by terrorists.
When 170 Nigerians die in a day,
A frustrated Senator George Sekibo cannot hide his dismay at the deaths of Nigerians in the hands of marauding terrorists.
when 170 Nigerians die in a day, 25 die maybe another day, and we are seeing it as we are rubbing it off that it's just a person. It's a controversial experience. Nigerians are dying, and we are here to protect them. Every day we come here, we hear about dead. Get off for 1 minute silence. Get off for 1 minute silence. It is enough. I think it is enough. Either we get a solution to it, or we don't take this person out again. But we are embarrassing the Senate and the nation.
Senator Sekibo's outburst is in response to a motion on the killings of several people in Plateau and Benue states days ago.
I do not think there's anybody that can justify.
The House of Representatives also debates the security situation in the country following two motions of urgent national importance on the attacks in Benue and Plateau states.
Who is responsible for the safety, for the security of lives and properties of the people of this country? Of course, without any fear of political misrepresentation, it is Mr. President.
In my own local community that I'm mentioning, we had a soldier who was supposed to be in Zamfara, giving pass for consecutively 6 months, who was arrested, giving uniforms to the bandits.
The chairman of the House Committee on Police Affairs questions why President Buhari has refused to let go of the Minister of Defense and National Security Advisor. The minority leader recommends that President Buhari takes drastic steps to confront the security crisis in the country.
If the president means well to this country, and if we are really trying to look for a solution, he has to immediately sack the National Security Advisor. 2, he had to remove his Minister of Defense.
Federal government should, as a matter of urgency, evoke the provision of Section 83, subsection 1, as it relates to contingency fund, to enable the government employ the mercenaries to quell this insurgency that is ravaging our country.
Federal lawmakers also recalled the security summit it held in 2021 and questioned the federal government's failure to implement the recommendations of that summit. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
Staying with security matters, the federal government is claiming that Boko Haram members and bandits are now working in collaboration to carry out attacks. According to the Minister of Information, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, the preliminary reports of the March the 28th attack on a Kaduna-bound train show that Boko Haram and bandits orchestrated the attacks, and this formed part of the briefing after this week's Federal Executive Council meeting.
Insecurity and vandalism were the focus of the question and answer sessions after the Federal Executive Council meeting chaired by President Muhammadu Buhari. In January, over 200 people were killed following attacks by bandits in Zamfara State. 10 soldiers were killed and an undisclosed number were injured at the military base in Birnin-Gwari, Kaduna State when it was attacked by bandits. And a passenger train headed to Kaduna State from Abuja was also attacked by bandits, with many killed and kidnapped by the bandits. When asked about the activities of bandits in northwest Nigeria, the Minister of Information and Culture updates on the preliminary report on the Kaduna-bound train attack, attributing the attacks in northwest Nigeria to a collaboration between bandits and Boko Haram terrorists.
Now, what's happening now is that there's a kind of unholy handshake between bandits and Boko Haram insurgents. And the preliminary reports of what transpired at the Kaduna train attack shows that there's been a kind of collaboration between the bandits and the dislodged Boko Haram fighters from the northeast.
Epileptic power supply has become a mainstay in the daily lives of Nigerians, causing loss of revenue in both public and private establishments. In just 2022, the nation's power grid has collapsed 5 times, with the most recent one caused by what the Minister of Power describes as vandalism on a transmission tower on the Odukani-Ikotekpene 330 kV double-circuit transmission line, leading to a loss of about 400 megawatts of generation. He believes these acts of vandalism are also acts of sabotage.
You can call it a sabotage because how can somebody go and pull down a 330 tower to cause this havoc to the whole country? What do you call that?
Continuous vandalization of power installations across the country, leading to continuous loss of Nigeria's power grid. could this be sabotage? The Minister of Power believes that it is. While the Nigerian people come to grips with the devastating effects of bandit attacks on the trains in Kaduna, as well as other bandit attacks across the country, this new handshake between Boko Haram and bandit groups could create a whole new dimension to this asymmetrical warfare, one that the Nigerian government has to confront immediately before it blossoms. From the State House in Abuja, Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
And when Newsround returns, Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo joins presidential race for 2023. Stay with us. Welcome back. Family members of those kidnapped in the attack on the Kaduna-bound train on March the 28th are appealing to the federal government to urgently rescue their loved ones from the hand of the kidnappers. This was their position when they paid a visit to the National Human Rights Commission in Abuja to seek a solution to the situation.
The cries of agony and heart-wrenching pain is palpable in this conference room at the National Human Rights Commission. Family members of the kidnapped travelers of the ill-fated AK-9 Abuja train shed uncontrollable tears. In an emotion-laden voice, they lament the agony the victims are going through in the hands of the bandits. They want government to rescue their loved ones.
There is a 7-month-old woman and 2 weeks now who only gives birth through cesarean section. Only God knows the trauma she's going through. We have other people that are sick, that require daily medication. They don't have access. There's a toddler who is 2 years old, for God's sake. We can only imagine what they're going through.
We can only plead, we can only beg the government, please, they should come to the aid of these people. Look at the pregnant woman, 7 months pregnant now, 2 weeks, it's like almost getting to 8 weeks, and she's already been given an appointment for cesarean section. Is she going to be there at that period? Please come to the rescue of our family members. Come to the rescue of your citizens. Come to the rescue of your children, of your son, of your wives. Please, Mr. President, do something.
The representative of the Executive Secretary, Human Rights Commission, assures them of a quick response.
The Commission is actually monitoring the events closely in the media and also making contacts with the relevant authority. We will definitely collect the plea and also ensure that it is transmitted to the relevant authority. And we will work closely with the relevant authority to ensure that the right thing is done.
The agony is written all over their faces as they continue to pray for the best for their loved ones.
Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo has finally joined the race that will ultimately decide who succeeds President Muhammadu Buhari in 2023. After months of speculation, the Vice President in a video said his decision to throw his hat in the ring is born out of the experience he has garnered in the last 7 years as the nation's #2 citizen. Professor Osinbajo also reeled out various sectors that he says his administration will prioritize if he emerges the nation's #1 citizen.
It's been months of speculations, denials, and counter-denials on whether the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, will throw his hat in the ring and vie for the top position in the land, the office of the President of Nigeria, after serving the country as Vice President for 7 years. Posters have inundated social media from various interest groups who've made several calls for the Vice President to take the plunge. The Vice President is not alone in this contest. He joins the likes of Rotimi Amechi, the President Minister of Transport, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, former Governor of Imo State, Senator Rocha Sokorocha, Governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, Yahaya Bello, the Governor of Kogi State, and Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a former governor of Lagos State, chieftain of the All Progressives Congress, and considered a mentor to Professor Shimbajo. At 7 a.m. Nigerian time on 11th of April 2022, Professor Shimbajo put the rumors to rest, declaring formally that he will be vying for the presidential ticket from his party, the All Progressives Congress.
I am today, with utmost humility, formally declaring my intention to run for the office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria on the platform of our great party, the All Progressives Congress.
In his 6-minute 57-second declaration speech, the Vice President tells party members and Nigerians why he's the man for the job.
I've visited our gallant troops in the Northeast and our brothers and sisters in the IDP camps. I've felt the pain and anguish of victims in violent conflicts, terrorist attacks, flooding, fire, and other disasters. I've been in the homes of many ordinary Nigerians in various parts of the country. I have sat with our techpreneurs in Lagos, Edo, and Kaduna, with our Nollywood and Kannywood actors, with our musicians from Lagos, Onitsha, and Kano, and I've spoken to small and large businesses. I stood where they stood, and I sat where they sat.
The Vice President vows to continue the work started by himself and President Muhammadu Buhari 7 years ago.
If by the grace of God and the will of the people I am given the opportunity, then I believe that first we must complete what we have started. Radically transforming our security and intelligence architecture, completing the reform of our justice system, focusing on adequate remuneration and welfare of judicial personnel, and ensuring justice for all and the observance of the rule of law.
Will Professor Shimbajo get the nod from his party? Will Nigerians buy his message of continuity? The next few months will be crucial as the race to the State House come 2023 becomes tighter. From the State House in Abuja, Kayla Magwa, Channels Television News.
Forging greater national unity, holding more dialogues, and renewing hope in Nigeria are some of the key issues played up by prominent Nigerians who gathered in Lagos for the presentation of the memoirs written by Dr. Yemi Ogunbiyi to commemorate his 75th birthday. The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, who was the special guest of honor, asks Nigerians to engage more with one another and adopt a new thinking that will lead to the country's restoration.
The Road Never Forgets, memoirs by Dr. Yemi Ogunbiyi, chairman of Tanis Communications and former managing director of Daily Times. A 500-page book the author presents at this ceremony as part of his 75th birthday celebration. The work tells compelling stories of his childhood, career, and the many successes he recorded during his professional career. It also tells us about his community engagements in Ogun State. Some of the dignitaries who graced the event include former Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Chief Emeka Anyukwu, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Major General Ike Nwachukwu, Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, Governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, Governor of Ogun State, Dapo Abiodun, Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka, and former Governor of Cross River State, Donald Duke. A former Governor of Ogun State, Olusegun Oshoba, who is the chairman of the ceremony, describes the book as one of intellect.
The book is factual, intellectual, educative, and thank God is something of history. I can assure you that those of us who want to be educated about the development in Nigeria will find the book very interesting.
Chief Emeka Anyukwu says the book is not only the story of Dr. Ogunbiyi's life, but also an admirable sketch of Nigeria's transformative conditions.
I believe that the picture that emerges from the book is that Nigeria has largely been on the decline during the period in question, and that in Yemi's words, Nigeria needs a fresh start, new thinking, and a new beginning.
Meanwhile, Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, in his address, says the country needs frank discussions like this to further unify the country.
As for anyone who has read this book or who will, you will notice that somehow it almost seems that by his open, vulnerable style, he disarms and commands empathy and admiration. And perhaps there is counsel there for us as a nation. Perhaps we need to talk more to ourselves and not at ourselves. We need frank discussions on the issues that divide us. And we need openness about our fears and prejudices. Perhaps that way we may gain each other's confidence.
Dr. Ogunbiyi, in his remarks, states that he wrote his memoir to inspire the next generation.
Our country needs a fresh start, new thinking, a new beginning. So in telling my unique story, I do so in the hope that it could engender a sense of regeneration for a national restoration to a past that I was familiar with as a child, and a future country that's more humane, better structured, one that guarantees a place for my children.
The ceremony also served as a fundraising for the Yemi Ogunbiyi Anglican Schools, Shagamu in Ogun State, and the entire proceeds from the public presentation will go to fund the expansion of the learning institution.
A news round ends in South Africa, where the death toll from floods in KwaZulu-Natal has reached more than 300. A state of disaster has been declared in the area after some others saw months' worth of rainfall in one day. Officials have called it one of the worst weather storms in the history of the country. Mudslides have trapped people beneath buildings, with more floods expected. And that ends News Round. Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Bye for now.